You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Welcome to Paleo Radio, live in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. My name is Joe Elder.
I'm Big Daddy Paleocrat, Jeremiah Bannister.
Look at Big Daddy Paleocrat.
Big Daddy, big pimpin' today in Grand Rapids.
Welcome to a new era, folks.
Yeah, it's a new era, if for no other reason than it has been officially declared, Joe, by the White House that, and maybe it's an alternative fact, I don't know, but the idea that Paleo Radio is the greatest show in Grand Rapids, period. Sean Spicer.
Yes, Sean Spicer said it. You
Yeah.
can go on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Paleo Radio, and check it out. But yes, indeedy, Sean Spicer did say that we are the greatest radio show in Grand Rapids, period. We have the proof of it in meme form, of course, on our wall.
Right, and over at Paleo Radio, you can find us, facebook.com/Paleo Radio. Everything that we say there, of course, is true, including the fact, and listen, I gotta just throw myself on the sword right away, Joe. There's no reason not to. Last week, at the tail end of the show, we brought up a story that, as we were talking about it, it sounded really fabulous. Like, I mean, almost a movie kind of.
Well, we even said it sounds like a movie,
and
right?
we even kind of, at the end, we had questions as to, I don't know exactly how this guy would get away with that. I mean, wouldn't it was a sniper, the story. For those who were not aware or who may have missed last week's show, of course, you can check that out with all of our shows at Spreaker.com/PaleoRadioShow. All of them are for free. But we were talking about this story that we found over, I think it was at the Mirror.
Yeah.
And at the Mirror, it was the Seattle Tribune. Okay, so as soon there's some of our listeners are going to hear that right away, and they're going to know what that is. Ding, 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 ding. So the Seattle Tribune, and it was about this sniper guy, right? And he was cleaning his rifle, and then he looks through his scope, and he sees the neighbors, and there's all this kind of torture going on, and people they have duct tape over their mouths, and they're tied up in chairs, and there's kids. And this guy pops them, right? And it kills the bad guys and everything.
Yeah,
and the
sensational.
Police. It's sensational. Totally fake news.
Yes.
Totally fake news.
We were bitten by a fake news bug, but the good thing is admitting it, right?
Well, it's not even just that, but that we have the kind of listener base. We had a listener called the show. And to my knowledge, that's the first time in my career, and you too, like either of us, where it's been like, we had somebody call, Stan44, a good friend, and he goes, I hate to do this to you guys, but you spread some fake news.
Well, and don't hate to do it, Stan, because you're a very good man, and the goal is to be right, not to just be there. Right?
Well, and to go out and say, listen, this is what happened. And there's no excuse, because the explanation that I'm about to give you gives the answer. I mean, the answer is kind of implicit in it, is that when we went from an hour long where all we did is we went hardcore, right, pedal to the metal on these topics, and we had a pretty diverse pool, but these were still relatively reputable sources, at least reputable in their spheres and stuff. People could disagree on their opinions, but they were sources that were okay. Going and talking about fun topics, right, or weird news, kind of puts you in a different world a little bit, and you start seeing sites that you're like, I don't know much about this site. And I saw it, and rather than doing what I do with every other thing, where I say, well, let's go find a competing narrative to this, right? Let's go find something that disagrees. Because it was a funny story, and we weren't using it to debate opinion and stuff, I said, why would I double-check that?
That's right.
And that is sloppy journalism. It's bad, and it bit us in the butt. But that's the thing, is to go and say, that happened. And we're really sorry for telling you a fake story about a sniper doing amazing things.
An amazing three-shot takedown of the burglars, right? That it is something. But, that's what happens. And like Jeremiah said, we had been talking about this before, where when we went to the 2-hour format, we're like, we want to find some punchy things to throw in there, some interesting stuff. That does lead you down those rabbit trails, where you get on YouTube and you're like, oh, I'm going to look at what's happening in Syria, and then you wind up watching like cats attack little kids and those sort of videos. It just happens, right? You go down the bunny trail. So it happened to us, but we openly admit it. Not going to happen today.
No.
But we do have a fantastic lineup of topics.
And funny stuff.
Yes, and good, true, funny stuff,
my
right?
goodness.
But we're going to be talking about Poland because that has taken a jump into the mainstream with a whole bunch of U.S. troops landing in there last week. We're going to discuss that.
We're going to touch a little bit, and I really don't know how much more can be said about this other than what's kind of already been said, but we haven't personally talked about the subject, and that is the situation in Chicago with the kidnapping and with the torture that was broadcast. And so we may say something about it, but as I was going over it, I said, I haven't seen anything new. I mean, it's kind of in that funky phase where it's going through the courts. And, but we may talk about that. And Rick Perry, of course.
Yes, we're going to talk about Rick Perry retracting what he said about getting rid of the Department of Energy. Now,
good on him, though.
Good on him for doing it. And the other thing, too, is he should take a little solace in the fact that not most of us do believe that he wasn't on his rocker in the first place, because he was proposing 3 departments to cut, and he forgot his third one, which was going to be education. Yeah. That was his oops moment that knocked him out of the 2012 campaign.
That's called you have handlers. And we've talked about this, how the whole game, that whole public position, private position, don't let Hillary talk too much about gay marriage stuff because that's not from her heart.
That's right.
That whole kind of game, that's true on the left and right. I mean, but they'll do that. They get these handlers and these people who say, well, I'm going to do a diagnostic on your campaign, and I'm going to tell you what I think you should say. And they thought that it was a good idea that time around. They said, hey, look, there's this kind of uprising of people that just want to destroy stuff. And so you should be the guy, Rick. You should be the guy to take down these organizations. And so, he had 3 of them that were given to him, and he apparently didn't memorize them well enough.
He forgot his 1, 2, 3 punch.
He was just a constant thorn in the side to his handlers. I can only imagine how frustrating life had to be for those people who, man, they've dealt with campaigns their whole life. They're dealing with the governor of a popular state that's got a lot of people in it, and there's a lot of presidential past here in Texas and stuff like that. And so to have him and to go up and just look like a complete buffoon.
Oh, man. They had to start from the bottom up when finally they were like, listen, he's not smart enough to get his message across and convey it in a way that's intelligent. Why don't we just throw glasses on him? And then we'll hope he gets smarter as he goes. And it turns out it seems like he is.
He actually did. Yeah.
Yes. But on top of that, we're going to be talking about many other things. The Women's March that happened yesterday and into today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about that.
In Battle Creek.
The old Creek.
Yeah, the Constitution. A student getting arrested at KCC. And I need to confirm this, Joe, but I have a feeling that somebody who's cited in the article that we're going to use, I think it's Eric Green. And if it's the same Eric Green, I'm thinking, man, this guy, we've got to pass. This guy used to be at the Battle Creek Enquirer, and I wasn't surprised when I heard the restrictions on free speech. And I thought, if this is the same guy, why am I just not surprised?
That's right.
Yeah.
Why are you not surprised? But first, we're going to get into Poland. And this is from abcnews.com. It's by Vanessa Jara of Associated Press out of Warsaw, Poland. U.S. troops enter Poland, first deployment at Russia's doorstep. American soldiers rolled into Poland on Thursday. Now, this was a couple weeks ago. Fulfilling a dream some Poles have had since the fall of communism in 1989 to have U.S. troops on their soil as a deterrent against Russia. Some people waved and held American flags as U.S. troops and tanks and other vehicles crossed into the southwestern Poland area from Germany and headed towards the Zygon, where they will be based. Poland's prime minister and defense minister will also welcome them in their official ceremony on Saturday, which was, again, 2 weeks ago. But this brings up some interesting things. The U.S. it's to what Russia would say is a show of force. What the U.S. is saying is that its regular battalion runs through NATO. It's just their turn to make one. But again, this is the first time since 1989 that U.S. troops are in Poland. So there is a lot of that kind of pandering going on in the geopolitical atmosphere.
I mean, they'll leave as soon as the round is over. I'm sure that they'll just...
that's what we do,
they'll
right?
Move on.
We're known for that.
We're
really known
on.
for leaving.
Yeah, we're really known. And, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry said in a statement on Thursday, this operation threatens our interests and our security. Well, you would, yeah.
Yes.
That's going to be the statement there
Yes.
from Russia.
Yeah.
That's what's going to come out.
Yes, Russia always, and this is true, right? Russia says whenever you put people on our border, that is a tense situation. We believe you're being offensive, and so we'll respond. Now, and it does seem like a probable thing to say, and I'm not, and you know me, and you know my role against and how I feel against the old Ruskies, right? But with Dmitry Peskov, he's very close with Vladimir Putin, the guy that made the comment here. But what Russia tends to do is get very aggressive, and they will move troops in first, and then when NATO responds, then they start talking about their home securities. For instance, there's an area between Poland and Lithuania that's exactly where Russia has a landmass in between the two of them, and they have that absolutely loaded to the brim with weapons, and they've moved them and had them over there for about 15 years. Now, the U.S. wanted to have an air defense system in the 80s to stop that, and Russia talked about home defense. But the question being, and I think this is the important one, is between the two of them, between NATO and Russia, which one actually has militaristic tanks that roll on the ground in combat zones that are in question right now, and which one is funding opposition forces? Because those are two different things. And Russia actively has military in three different
we have military
sovereign countries that are in.
I don't know.
I
would want to get, and I don't have it on the top of my head, so I don't want to pretend. But there was an interview that I saw, and if you're a listener and you know of the interview I'm speaking of, give us a call 616-656-1680. But there was an interview where I don't know if it was Panetta or who it was that was being asked, and it's recent. I don't think it's Panetta. I think it's somebody currently more involved, and they were saying that we're involved in a whole bunch of these ground altercations that involve weapons and that involve tanks and things like that. And he laughed and he said it was too many for him to count.
That's right.
And then the guy asked back and kind of pushed back on it and said, well, what is your estimate on that? I mean, how many is, like, what are you getting at here? And I mean, it's a lot. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so I don't really know how I would answer that question.
I think I would, and this is kind of what my point or what I'm trying to go at is that I know it's bad to sell weapons, but it's different when you actually have your own military's artillery lineup running and bombasting a neutral sovereign state next to you. I mean, it's the difference of selling. It's the difference of the DEA and what they did in the past 4 years selling guns to drug runners in Mexico as compared to having a lineup of artillery shelling into southern Canada and having tanks in southern Canada. I mean, they're just two different forms of aggression.
We're pretty notorious for gun running, too. And that's the other thing is I'm not entirely, as I said, I'm not entirely sure, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, but to say, you know, one of the things that America is notorious for is our gun running, in fact.
That's my point.
We find our stuff fueling opposition all around the world.
Yes.
Whether we do it with guns, whether we do it with intelligence and with operatives and movements and different things, we do a lot of that same kind of thing. And sometimes it involves weapons.
But what I'm saying is I'm openly admitting that we push guns as in hand weapons. I'm saying it would be much different as we as a state moved in, especially because we have geopolitical purposes for pushing small arms groups and contra groups and supporting different government groups at different times. You know, it just depends on who has our interests. Right now, we're supporting the government of Ukraine, but then we go over and we support rebels in Syria, right? So, like, we play dirty games. One thing to be noted, though, the most common weapon that is shared amongst the world is the AK-47. It's a Russian-made weapon, so it's not to say that they aren't not even competing, but also very successful at their gun trade.
Oh yeah. And as I said, like, it's by no means meant to diminish the gun running of the Ruskies and to say, hey, you know, they have an interest in that as well. And when they talk about those things, when we talk about, and this is where it gets tough for me, is like when we talk about things like national interest and we use phrases like we or, you know, we're doing this over here, we're doing that over there, and that it's in our interest, every nation is saying that. You know, every nation. And maybe more importantly is that every nation has tons of people who go, man, that's just not my interest. I don't even know who that we is. To me, that's a they. That's a them, not a we. And so I look at it and say, does it mean it's equal? Does that morally consign this to both sides being even Stevens? No. But it does say these are facts that ought to be recognized across the board, that it's not something unique to one group. In fact, it's something that we actually specialize in and we're historically renowned for. And
That's right.
So, I think it's just good to, for me anyway,
Yes.
to have that on the mind.
No, it is. It's a great thing to acknowledge it. Now, I think the question is, particularly, and hey, maybe I'm showing some privilege here, where I'm saying world wars begin in Europe. Skirmishes and other wars begin outside of Europe. But the world wars, the examples are very well known, that Eastern Europe is the central focus point of where massive wars break out. It's happened twice. So if we look at that area and what's happening, there are areas that have always been players of the game that are also still players in the game and are still talking having the same conversations and the same fears. And though in those particular areas, there's been a few of them that have wanted to get, and I know that I sound so George Bushy here, but in 1989, when you had just that explosion of people that left the Soviet Union, that didn't happen because the United States funded them. It happened because those people exploded out of the Soviet Union. Germany accidentally said that people from Eastern Germany could go to Western Germany, and the next day they broke down the wall.
Yeah, but didn't the Ukraine only become this way because of Khrushchev? I mean, didn't he with a stroke of the pen, right? The whole peninsula was gone. I mean, the history of this. I mean, how did Crimea become part of the Ukraine? Who made, and on what basis was the decision?
Yeah, it's contentious area, right?
And I would say this is all I guess I'd say to it, is that when we talk about these things, and we talk about, look where the world wars start, look at where these issues start, I'd say, man, that is what George Washington said. He said, look at where these wars start. All these wars are always going on with Europe. They always have. They always will. They're constantly embroiled in these problems. And he said, we're actually in a good place because we're divided by the Pacific and the Atlantic. We've got a comfortable situation, and we can be selective. We don't have to get involved in those. And in fact, he warned against it and encouraged against it. And listen, I'm not a pacifist. I'm not already, based on my ideology, against the next war. But as a default position, I kind of look at skirmishes when we talk about those in Europe, and I can't help but to hear the echoes of George Washington.
That's right. No, I believe it. It's a perpetual thing. War won't ever go away. He was right. War won't ever go away.
Yeah, not only that, but their involvement with Europe, I wouldn't say it was quite so naive. I would say that he's actually describing something that, based on what we're talking about here, is actually prophetic.
Who would we be trading if we were not involved? It's kind of the same thing as what FDR ran into. Who would we be trading with when the European nations, or at that time the League of Nations, was falling apart? U.S. infrastructure began building bombs and weaponry 2 years before they got involved in the war because their economy tanked. Also connected with the fact that their main trade partners were in the middle of a war, and that for complete and utter selfish reasons, it still would affect the United States to not be involved.
The same argument could be made, and I just don't find those compelling arguments necessarily, if for no other reason than I've heard it a million times.
Yeah.
Every humanitarian intervention in my entire life has been premised on some kind of argument like that. And I've watched as veterans line up like crazy. I've watched as people have had arms blown off. I haven't watched it personally. I've met them who've had their arms blown off by this crap. And I just kind of say, we need to do better, because it starts to feel like every policy put forward domestically, people saying, well, interstate commerce. Well, it's a blanket statement at that point. If it applies to any situation, then, I mean, something's not right. And so I'm skeptical at this point of my life. I'm just skeptical. I hear it and I say I need more than that, especially from a state that I don't really trust.
Yep. Well, I've got maybe 2 points to it, and then we're going to have to definitely get to our break. But one main point would be we can't act like by doing nothing we actually are being less violent, because the countries that get affected by it have massive violence in it, especially when they're trying to leave the eastern Russia or the western parts of Russia. Like, for instance, Georgia, Sheroshenko, the leader, he gets in power. He tells Russia directly, we're going to be joining the EU. He goes to join the EU and eventually gets into an absolute war with Russia. And I just think we're not comparing apples to apples when you look at NATO. When you look at the U.S., yes, of course. The U.S. and Russia, yes. When you look at NATO, there's not examples of NATO with tanks and artillery in those combat zones. It's only Russia. They're in 3 of them. There is not NATO tanks or NATO air defense in those areas. There's not even people on the ground. But there is Russians. So I think it's a difference of who's being aggressive.
I'd be interested to hear sometime when we have more time about it, to find out how we rationalize places like Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, for example, or Goa, right, with India, or Zanzibar, and you've got a number of these examples that we have, even Hawaii, right? I mean, these are similar examples that, in fact, Russia, when talking about it at the UN, and people voting on it, 100 people voted against Russia, and 69 voted in their favor. That's 70 to 100. It's not a blowout.
That's right.
And some of the nations that sided with them are ones that have also been involved with us in one way or another, like Iraq, Afghanistan, in China, for example. These countries that they've dealt with us. They've dealt with our military. They've dealt with the military-industrial complex. They've dealt with all these things, and they say, "Listen, we don't side with this proposal." And they invoke as their precedent. They invoke things like Kosovo, and they say this is a precedent that the West created, that we didn't create. But as I said, it would be a fun topic when we have more time. But it's something that has been on my mind, and I'd like to hear good arguments as to how, with those precedents that were mentioned, even just briefly, on what grounds we take this as kind of a special exception, what Russia's doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think the big kicker is that we are both world powers. We are honestly both world powers seeking one thing. Call it selfish or not, but I would much rather it be America with the power hand that puts sanctions on Russia than having it turn the other way. And nation by nation, I think we're seeing that shift. Stick around, folks. 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, Paleo Radio.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
You're listening to the greatest show that's ever existed. It's not a scientific poll, but I feel it in my bones, Joe.
It is still a fact.
It's still a fact.
It's an alternative fact, but a fact nonetheless. We'll Kellyanne Conway this.
We're going to Kellyanne Conway this. Speaking of Kellyanne Conway, we were gonna touch for a second on the Chicago story here, because we have a short segment, and we're going to be, after this segment, we've got a comedian in the house.
Yeah, we have Brian Borbett, he runs the house. He runs Sunday Night Funnies here in Grand Rapids. He's a fantastic guy. He's also involved with Gilda's LaughFest, which is coming up here in Grand Rapids. We're going to have a chat with him.
Yeah, we're going to have a chat with him, so you're not going to want to go anywhere. And Gilda's Club, listen, for people who have followed Paleo Radio and who followed Team Tiny Dancer, my daughter's story, my daughter passed away in July. Gilda's Club is something that we've mentioned many times throughout the last couple of years. Many of the people who followed Samantha's story it got involved with Gilda's Club. In fact, some of our closest friends have sent their kids there, and even our children spent time at Gilda's Club. A great experience. They loved it so much they wanted to go back. I have not personally participated, and I know I should. It's one of those things where it's meant as something for families going through hard times. They actually kind of break it up into different ways. Families that have individuals who are dying, and families who have lost somebody. And
yes.
So different things that are being done for people in town. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. That interview is going to come up after this short segment. But we mentioned a couple weeks ago, we mentioned that whole Chicago situation, and we just want to just touch on it briefly in case you're unaware. But there was, right here, Daily Mail, exclusive, Chicago torture victim, 18, is asking why friend he idolized was one of black gang who beat, burned, and tortured him, chanting F Trump, F white people. This is by Louise Boyle in Crystal Lake, Illinois. The aunt of a special needs teenager who was tortured for hours by 4 friends has told DailyMail.com that he was unable to speak about the attack, other than to repeatedly ask why a friend he idolized had done this to him. He didn't understand. He kept asking why. Jordan was my friend. He's been my friend for a couple years. This 18-year-old kid, right, it was a 6-hour ordeal. He was beaten. He was cut. He was burned. He was forced to drink from a toilet. And these people, as I said, they went to school together. He idolized these people, and he had mental issues. He does have mental issues. He's a person who is part of the disabled community, and so this was particularly heinous. And I'm grateful that a GoFundMe account, it was set up, and they've in fact raised a lot of money for him. But the big question is over hate crime, and that's what the big question is this a hate crime? And I think that I believe they've actually formally charged them now.
Oh yeah,
with a hate crime.
I wasn't too worried about that not being charged as a hate crime.
It seemed the
evidence,
like the proof is in the pudding, right?
Well, the proof is in the pudding, and despite the claim, there is actually very scant evidence that when black folks commit crimes like this, they don't get charged with hate crimes. It happens.
Right, it happens. So it's not as if it's entirely unprecedented.
That's right.
Hill was also charged with robbery and possession of a stolen motor vehicle. May face additional charges of residential burglary, according to the Cook County State Attorney's Office. CBS, and this is what I thought was interesting.
Very interesting, right?
CBS Radio deceptively implies Chicago torturers were white Trump supporters and that victim was black. This was over at Mediaite by Alex Griswold, and it starts by saying this. A CBS radio news report on the video of 4 young Chicago people torturing a mentally disabled man falsely implied that the victim was black and his attackers were white, when in fact the opposite was true. The video went viral, and in the video it says this. The CBS reporter is Dean Reynolds, and it tells us the victim is described as a mentally challenged teenager and says, quote, in the video he's choked and repeatedly called the N-word. His clothes are slashed and he's terrorized with a knife. His alleged captors repeatedly reference Donald Trump. Police are holding 4 people in connection with the attack.
Yeah. So
that's
and I wonder if I wonder if they got some sort of report. And this is obviously them jumping the gun. Like, without a doubt, they didn't do their research on it. But when they were seeing the references to Donald Trump, if they were assuming people were yelling like pro-Donald Trump things while doing it, but all the same, it all is. It's not to say it's irrelevant, but it's not very close to relevant in comparison to the fact that they took a story, they got a very minimal amount of evidence, and they ran with it and just started reporting on it, which is always dude. Everybody in media is Ricky Bobby. It's just if you ain't first, you're last type mentality, and that's all it is. It's really upsetting to see that happened. But I'm very glad that it was a hate crime charge. It was a hate crime.
It was a hate crime.
He was targeted based upon his appearance.
Yes.
And probably his vulnerability too, which makes that even worse.
Yeah. And so it's a big story. You don't want to go anywhere. We've got an amazing interview, Joe.
Yes, we're going to go on an uptick now and have some fun. We're going to have Brian Borbett in from Sunday Night Funnies, also involved with Gilda's LaughFest. He's going to come talk about that. That along with many, many other things. Stick around, folks. We will be right back.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Thank you, Nathan, for that fantastic introduction. You're listening to Paleo Radio, fantastic program broadcasting out of Public Reality Radio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you would like to give us a call, 616-656-1680. Joe, we've got fantastic guest in, and we've learned something new, in fact, about him.
Yeah, we learned something new. I mean, a man that I've known for a long time. I always knew he went by the name Brian B., and there's a reason for it. To go by Brian B., it's because we've been pronouncing your name incorrectly, haven't we?
Yeah, but that's
yes,
okay.
But that's okay. We're just going to stick with Brian B. But thank you, Brian B., for joining. Brian B. is in his 9th year of hosting, running, operating, creating Sunday Night Funnies here in Grand Rapids.
Yes.
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 That is correct. Where'd you get that from?
Hey, man, right from the top of the head, man.
Which I emailed to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe it came from
It's gotta
there.
be true.
Well, it was in the head, but it came from the email, obviously. So we wanted to talk about Gilda's LaughFest coming up.
Okay.
And we wanted to talk about how you're involved with it or how long you've been involved with it.
Well, I've been involved with it since the beginning. The first year of Gilda's, I happened to have cancer at the same time, which was, good timing, I guess.
Right.
But, if you're going to have cancer, at least have it timely, But no, there's not good timing. But anyway, so I got involved with Gilda's and started doing a fundraiser for them because, I was going through the treatment, radiation, chemo. I only missed one of the shows. That was after my first chemo. So people were seeing my hair fall out and lose weight and radiation burns on my neck, from that, So I didn't hide it all. And it was actually getting involved with Gilda's was taking my mind off of it for a while, So I thought it was a good thing. And, the first year we raised, I think it was $1,510. And then this last year was $45, I believe, we raised. So.
Yeah.
And you were part of that, Joe.
Yeah, I was. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, $4,200. That's great.
We auctioned off some of your meat.
Yes, I auctioned off some of my meat. I gave it away. It wasn't for free. It never is.
And for people who don't know what that is, yeah.
Well, wait, I have to explain.
Yeah, you got to explain that.
No, my family, we have Elder's Dairy Beef, and actually I'm hoping to be involved with it this year doing the same thing.
Well, you said you're going to.
Absolutely, I'm going to. So up at home, we do all sorts of cuts. We have rump roast. We have the back straps. We've got all sorts of things, loin. And we do ground beef. We do ham, pork, all sorts of different stuff. And I'm going to be auctioning off about $50 worth of that, maybe even more if I can afford it.
Cool, yeah.
So
you just gave your business a plug there.
So there's a free plug. Look at that, huh? Can you guys believe it? It almost happened so smoothly, no one even noticed.
I shouldn't even brought it up.
Nah.
Now, how long is this event? Because I know that some people that I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I missed it. I missed that one day. And as I went through, I'm like, I don't think this is a one-day event. I think it's multiple days.
It's 10 days, and the shows that the Sunday Night Funnies are doing is the 12th and 19th. The 19th is the last day, and it starts the Thursday before the 12th, so that'd be 11, 10, 9.
Yes,
so
and this is of March, Yep,
March 9. So, yeah.
That's right. And then there's also Funniest Person in Grand Rapids, which is that actually associated, or is that just going on at the same time?
I think they put it on hold till I'm not sure, but it's not associated, as far as I know. I could be wrong, but in the past they weren't associated with it, and they kind of put it on hold through LaughFest.
Okay.
And it was in the past. I don't know if they're doing it now. I'm not part of it, so I don't really know the workings of that.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, well, and since we're doing plugs just so...
Yeah, well,
because being in with comedians, right? Yeah. There is another event that goes on that's called Funniest Person in Grand Rapids, which is almost like Last Comic Standing style, where people go in and they compete, and you have a crowd vote and a judge's vote, and you move on, and it's a pretty cool thing. So for comedy fans, check that out as well. But we're talking LaughFest, and we're talking Gilda's. What is the lineup that we have for LaughFest in March coming up? Do you know any big names? I can look them up here, too.
The one I like is Pete Holmes. I want to be a part of him. I mean, if that sounds weird. I want to be a part of him. No, part of the show. Right. I like to do it besides emceeing the funnies during the LaughFest shows. I like to do front of the house, which is usher and meet and greet, and it gets me in the shows. Plus, it gets it's a fun atmosphere, so. A lot of work involved with the shows I put on for it, so I try not to do too many other shows myself, but I like to do that, kind of get away from, organizing a show. So
yeah,
but that was one I was going to volunteer for because he's a really funny guy, and we're looking forward to it. And there's some other ones too. Right. Did you pull up and see?
Yep. Yeah, we have Seth Meyers is going to be coming in. He's the late night host on NBC.
Is he coming back? He was there last year. You sure that's updated?
Joe.
That might be more fake news, Joe.
Yeah, there's my fake news list.
More fake news.
You are Kellyanne?
Yeah, that's right. We've been doing it all day.
All day long, alternative facts from the White House.
I know Sinbad's coming back.
Cat Williams, I believe.
Cat Williams,
He's gonna try. No, I shouldn't say that. He's amazing. Joel McHale, who used to be on
Joel's
Community,
great.
is going to be there. Kevin Heffernan is going to be there. He's a kind of a lower level guy. I shouldn't say lower level, but he's
There you go, Joe. Great.
yeah. I shouldn't say that.
Wow.
but B level, I guess. No,
He's not going to be there now.
no, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look,
It's a
I
comedy war.
say this with great confidence. If he's B level, that means I'm not even rated. So that's not a worry for me. But yes, Cat Williams is going to be there. A good amount of people.
Oh,
wow.
yeah. And they'll be announcing more shows, too, as time goes on. They did it different this year. Before, they had like a big kickoff and announced a lot of acts, where this time around they kind of do it, stagger it a little bit, and keep the excitement going and add people as they go along. And, so...
And they've got it in different places. I mean, you've got the Bob, third floor, Dr. Grins, you've got Wealthy Theater. So they're spreading it out around different parts of town.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh, yeah. There's they do that. They different venues. They add and subtract venues as as time goes along. Like people they might have done last year, maybe that didn't get, we're happy with. I don't know, but they add new rooms all the time, and it's across town, different venues. So it's not just at Dr. Grins or Wealthy Street's been
Right.
involved with it for a few years, and who knows, I might be part of those shows, too, because I'm on the board for CMC, and I volunteer at Wealthy Street, too, so maybe I'll do that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking on here, and even places like DeVos Performance Hall, Fountain
Yeah.
Street, the Pyramid Scheme, love that place.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is cool. There's a whole bunch of
Howie Mandel is
interesting venues.
the main one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How Mandel?
I have an interesting.
fire away to Howie.
I spoke this year at the Make-A-Wish Michigan Wish Ball.
Okay.
My daughter had cancer. She
Oh,
died
wow.
in July.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. She was amazing and inspirational and went viral. She's an amazing human being. But we went there, and it was a family event, right? And I don't know how family-oriented his comedy was that night. I think there were a couple gasps over a couple of things. It was surprising for me. Yeah, right. It was surprising for me because I'm just so accustomed to seeing him on America's Got Talent. I mean, that's about where I see him. So for people like you and Joe, of Howie Mandel in a different way as a comedian, right?
Yeah, in fact, I've seen Howie a couple times, but it was years ago when he actually had like a full head of hair.
Yeah, when he was doing Bobby's World, right?
Yeah, he was doing like the rubber glove over his face, and he'd inflate it, and he was doing a lot of visual stuff. So I'm sure his act's probably different now than when it was then. But that's the thing. Like last year, I guess some people didn't like Seth Meyer because he swore. They used to see him on SNL and late night now, or Bob Saget. He's not the Full House guy.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a different world, people. Do some research.
Well, and everyone seems to forget about Bob Saget, but it was like when he got picked up for Full House, he was already doing his stand-up. So everyone should have known what Bob Saget was. And again, like you're saying, it's a different medium, right?
Right.
If I'm going to host NBC, or like we're talking on the radio show, we can't discuss things in all sorts of manner because there's things like the FCC.
Right.
So you have to go through different channels to do your comedy or do your art. So I'm kind of...
And it kind of cracks me up whenever somebody goes to a comedy show and gets mad that they swore.
Oh, I love that.
I'm just
don't
like,
you?
are you kidding? Like, where did you think you were going?
Yes.
Branson?
Well, that happened at the Funnies a few years ago, where and I brought it up I bring it up every now and then, where there was like a couple in their 70s was at the show. They were staying at the hotel at the show. They sat through the whole show, and then the next day when they're checking out, they complained. It's like, really? That's like going to a strip bar and complaining you saw breasts.
That's
you
right.
know?
It's
So
passive aggressive is all get out.
I think they're just
They're
trying to
like,
get a discount on their room.
we're going to have our
So-
meal, take our continental breakfast, and at the very end, express our displeasure with the event. Like, come on.
Yeah, I really liked it, but they said some swear words.
Yes.
I mean, to each their own, right? I mean, different strokes, different folks. Some people like Mark Lowry. A couple.
Yeah, hey, that's how it is.
A couple people. Yeah. But it's good when you throw a Christian comedian under the bus in front of comedians and they don't know who he is. I mean, it's like, there's like, I don't know, endorphins are going like crazy.
Speaking of Sunday Night Funnies, you guys have moved locations. For people who have been there before, we're in a better spot. I say we like I'm part of it that much, but I'm really happy about it.
You're part of it. Yeah, it was less than 24 hours before the last show at the last venue. I stopped into the lounge on the way home from doing a show in South Haven, and they informed me that the next night, tomorrow night, was going to be the last show there. And it's like, seriously?
Nice, thanks.
Yeah. And I emailed them before and said, I knew some changes were going on with the hotel. They're getting rid of the entertainment, but they didn't say anything to me. and they're remodeling. They closed the restaurant. This is over at Riverfront, which is now called the Grand River Hotel. And so we didn't know how to get a hold of you. It's like, seriously?
Yes.
So I immediately left there and went and seen Bob Sullivan, who is a local businessman and who owned a Riverfront and sold it a couple years ago, and he also owns a 131 hotel. But I immediately left there, went and seen him, and like within 20 minutes I had a deal. Because we did a Wednesday show there for a while at the 131 hotel, and he saw what kind of traffic the show can bring in, so we moved the show over there, and we started on the 8th of this month, and we've done 3 shows there, So it's a good room. I actually think it's a better room than Riverfront was.
It is. And just to give people an idea, Sunday Night Funnies, like Brian said, has been running for 9 years, but it has over 5,000 likes on its Facebook page, and the Facebook page obviously hasn't been up for 9 whole years, or has it?
Well, it's been up for a long time, but not that long.
But I mean,
no.
This is, I can say this as a guy who's been doing comedy here in Grand Rapids. It's one of the most established local comedy places in all of Grand Rapids, without a doubt. So to have that happen it's great that it turned out even better for you, because you get a better room, a bigger room. It's wider. There's a bar on the side, so it's not so much traffic.
Right.
There's a lot of positives about it, but it is kind of ironic the choices that were made to have you go. I just have to say.
I don't. They burned a lot of bridges with people in town, so I wish them nothing but the best. But it's funny, people really they painted the building white and purple. I go, yeah, I know.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think where we're at now is better for it. I mean, I got signs out there 24/7 on the busiest street in town. And Bob gets it. He's owned bars, and everything, so he gets what we're doing, and I think he appreciates the people I bring in on a Sunday night. Sunday night's not a big entertainment night, and I want to be the big fish in a little pond. So, so it's going to do well. I think.
If you get there early enough, isn't there karaoke?
Karaoke before and after. Yeah,
karaoke before and after. And I wanted to say, growing up in Battle Creek, my wife and I, we're both from the Crick, and we had the comedy club over there. But you never saw it as active and vibrant and as alive, and not just because of the size of the time. I mean, there's something to be said when you're driving down 131 here and you see comedians like crazy on the billboards, when you can drive around town and you see stuff for LaughFest, when even if you're any kind of socialite, right, and you're walking around town, you're going to meet people and have people in your network that's what they do, that they go, that they participate, and it's just a really cool thing to see it, not only to make people laugh, but also to promote such a good cause like Gilda's.
Yeah, there's more. I think we can do more than go and tell penis jokes. I think we can contribute to the community, and through Gilda's, we've raised close to $20,000 over the time we've done it. And a lot of people have already committed for this year, including Joe and his meat,
and my meat,
and Joe's meat, and and other comics who do it every year. And some guys only get to see him once a year, and that's during the LaughFest. But it's kind of giving back to the community, and I think Grand Rapids is pretty good about that, and I just, some comics like, I don't want, okay, fine, if you don't have the money for it, that's fine, just sit this show out and do a different show, but a lot of guys have come to the table, a lot of comics, and it's been a great thing,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is a great event. I was part of it last year. I'm happy to be part of it this year. Just one more time, please let people know about Sunday Night Funnies, what time it is and where it's at, and then the LaughFest shows. Before we let you go. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No problem. Got it all upstairs. Sunday Night Funnies, it's every Sunday night. It's 7:30 now. It used to be 8:30 at the old place, but 7:30 now at the 131 Hotel Plaza, 255 28th Street Southwest. It's like less than a half mile off the US 131 going east, before Buchanan. It's in the bar and grill, park in the back. Just walk right in the lounge there. But that's every Sunday, 7:30. It's $2 to get in. LaughFest shows are the 12th and 19th of March. We do a silent auction, and we do for goods and services, throughout the area. And then we do some live auctions, some kind of fun stuff on stage as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian B. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Much appreciated. Again, he will be part of LaughFest and Sunday Night Funnies. Been running Sunday Night Funnies for 9 years. Good buddy of mine. Thanks again, Brian B., for stopping in.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be right back, guys. 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. Don't go anywhere.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
You know, Joe, Paleo Radio claims that they've discovered the mole.
They did.
Yeah,
They
they
discovered
did.
the mole.
Paleo Radio, a bunch of scoundrels, a bunch of dirty heathens spreading fake news left and right, blaming yours truly
Yeah, saying it
as
was
being
you.
the mole. They can't prove that.
No.
They can't prove that I've been leaking videos from my YouTube page and pretending it's not me.
They can't. No, there's no way.
There's no proof.
They can't find hackers. They can't find Russian hackers. There's no way they can.
And, you know, with all the technology, we actually shared on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Paleo Radio, there is a video there of the technology that Paleo Radio is using to try to figure out this stuff. And it looks a lot like that show Kung Fury.
Yes.
It looks a lot like it, but it's obviously real. It's very futuristic. And so you can go, and with all of their talent and all of their technology and skills, Paleo Radio still can't prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, who the leaker is. Who
Yes.
is the trollish mole that is trying to take down Paleocrat and Paleo Joe?
We're currently hiring CrowdStrike to look into it. Hopefully they can get us the answers that we'd like.
We're willing to pay big money.
That's an inside one for everybody. But,
But that video, there was a video that was leaked, and
Yes.
it's a behind the scenes thing. I never thought it would get out. It's where I open up about stuff that I'm kind of claiming is the agenda of what's going on. And so you can go and you can find that yourself. It's the video that they don't want you to see. And you can find that at facebook.com/Paleo Radio.
That's right. Now getting into a Guardian article, and Rick Perry. We're going to get into some other good stuff.
Rick Perry.
He wanted to behave almost like a mole in the Department of Energy a couple years back, right? And wanted to destroy the Department of Energy. But Rick Perry has had a change of heart. He's turned over a new leaf. Or a leafasis, as he may say. And this is from The Guardian, like I said. Rick Perry regrets pledge to abolish department he is now tapped to lead. Donald Trump's nominee to head the Department of Energy says statements made years ago about abolishing do not reflect my current thinking. And, surprise, surprise.
But,
But a good thing.
It's a good thing, and changes happen. I mean, he could use the defense that when new data comes to his attention or he realizes that he was wrong about something, that he just changes his mind. That's how truth
right.
works. I've heard that used in defending a lot of positions that changed for political expediency in the last, year.
That's right. I have.
We've heard it a lot.
I have. We've heard that quite a bit. And, seriously, tip a hat to Rick Perry for not wanting to get rid of the Department of Energy. I mean, baby steps, right? I'm happy he did. I think he just found out, and I'm not kidding, I think he did just find out that they are in control of the nuclear weapons. The nuclear weapons. I'm sorry. I have people.
Did you say nuclear?
I did the nuclear. I did
the nuclear. Did you see that video, Joe? Where they put all of the people, all the different people in the hearings, where they're properly saying nuclear,
and he's
like nuclear,
yes.
and it's just hilarious.
It's why I was sensitive to the subject too.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think he just found out that they have the nuclear weapons. I think it just occurred to him. I think he thought that was in the bomb department.
Yeah.
I don't know what Rick Perry was thinking. There's no way to know.
The bomb department.
So into the article it says, former Texas Governor Rick Perry, tapped by President-elect Donald Trump to head the Energy Department, has vowed to be an advocate for the agency he once pledged to eliminate and has promised to rely on federal scientists, including those who work on climate change. Perry told the Senate committee on Thursday that he regretted his infamous statement about abolishing the department and insisted that it performed critical functions, particularly in protecting and modernizing the country's nuclear stockpile. So, yes.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, quote, my past statements made over 5 years ago about abolishing the Department of Energy do not reflect my current thinking. In fact, after being briefed on many of the vital functions of the Department of Energy, I regret recommending its elimination.
Yeah,
so
and
thank you, Rick.
Yeah, so there is actually a lesson to be learned, everybody, in this, and that is it's recklessly dumb to come out with a very, very deep-rooted moral conviction on something that you have not been briefed on. That if you don't know the information and it has not been provided to you, that if you just jump in and go, hey, I really don't know jack about this, But I'm going to go ahead and just say we need to get rid of this stuff. If you do that, the likelihood of falling on your own sword or swallowing all 10 of your toes in just a grotesque fashion, that's really – the probability is just really skyrocketed at that point. And this happens to be a case in point.
That's right. Yeah, and, I mean, Rick Perry's – he's kind of changing his positions on quite a few things, which I'm glad to see. But also, it was something I did not predict, but after seeing it happen, it does kind of become a little bit more obvious. Many people who are taking over departments that are Republicans right now are not – there are those people that are saying that climate change isn't directly caused by man, but there is not many that are debating that climate change isn't happening. And again, I'm baby stepping it.
Right.
I'm doing What About Bob here, the
valid.
classic comedy with Bill Murray. But it is to say that the conversation has moved from it's not real to it's real, but we didn't do it. And that is the first step of what I've always said is the progress to the solution, which is it can never happen. It's fake. It's real, but I'm not involved. It's real, I'm involved, and now we have a solution. I told you we should have done this the whole time. That's the evolution of how it works.
And you've just described the anatomy of the evolution of conservatism and conservative thoughts. That is how it goes with everything. They oppose it, and then it kind of establishes itself, and they kind of learn new things about it and the utility of it, and become either convinced by the utility of it or by the evidence that can't be refuted for too long. After a while, it gets old, and it starts to make people look dumb. Yes. And so the question is, well, what do we do then? How do we control it? And how are we the ones in power? Even if not to completely, like you said, it's actually a really big point to say, to go from a position that says I want to get rid of something completely to, yes, I do believe that humans, I believe climate change is happening and that humans play a part.
Yeah, that's
actually a big freaking leap.
That's a huge adaptation. Yeah. He also said in his confirmation hearing, quote, I believe some of it is natural occurring. He's talking about climate change.
Right.
I believe some of it is naturally occurring, but some of it is also caused by man-made activity. The question is, how do we address it in a thoughtful way that doesn't compromise economic growth, the affordability of energy, or American jobs? Now, here, that's not everything I want to hear from Rick Perry. Don't get me wrong, and it shouldn't be from everybody else. But we have to admit that is a different position than we were at even 4 years ago. It's in politics, it's mortar and pestle, it's slow and grinding, and this is a huge move towards the right direction, at least, that people discuss it, and they've connected CO2 and man-made global warming or climate change.
Because before it would simply be this. We don't want anything we do to compromise economic growth or the affordability of energy or American jobs. That was just the extent, right? This idea that no matter what we do economically, it's not going to have any impact on the earth.
Yes.
Right? I mean, and so to get from that place where before it was simply you don't touch economic growth, no matter what we do, that is the supreme good, to saying, there's actually something going on here that is connected to this. We do want to balance with growth. We don't want to damage that. We don't want to make it unaffordable for people. And we want to be able to promote jobs at the same time. Baby steps. I'm good.
Baby steps, making moves. Stick around, folks. We're going to be talking about a lot more things. Women's March, natural selection causing the smarties of the gene pool to be a little bit less. All sorts of goodies. Stick around, 95.3 FM.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio here in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. And as always, you can call in 616-656-1680 to join the conversation.
Yes, totally true.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we have a question of the day, Joe.
We do have a question of the day.
And if anybody wants to call, you can give us a call, 616-656-1680. And I'll repeat it one more time. Put it in your speed dial. You just got to do it. And set an alarm to remind you to take part in this every single Monday. But 616-656-1680. And the question of the day, Joe.
Yes, and we're just going basic trivia here, but name the world's biggest island.
Yeah, the world's biggest island. So if you know
What
the
is
answer, what is it? What is the name of the biggest island on Earth? You can give us a call, 616-656-1680. If you win, you get a public reality radio magnet. And we're trying to get some other stuff, too. We have some great things in the works. We're kind of batting around ideas of cups and shirts and
T-shirts and
posters.
all sorts of goodies.
Yeah. Even stuff for our Paleo Divas. And we ought to just give a big shout-out. It seems even good connected with the topic with Women's March that we're going to cover. But Paleo Divas, we love you like
Yes.
crazy. And I love how things are just organically developing, Joe, with the show.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
It is really nice. We have some great diehard fans. One of them by name. Her name is Mel Rice. She's
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah, she's you're an amazing person, Mel. And if you go to Paleo Radio's wall, if you go to Joe's wall and to my wall on Facebook, if you do this, you're going to see these memes that she's cranking out. And I thought one that was particularly funny was a recent one, and it invoked the spirit of Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka and the Charlie Factory. It said, "I want my Paleo Radio, and I want it now."
Yes.
And it was Derek, and Derek, a listener, has a back joy.
The back joy.
He has a back joy, so he's been inspired by the program.
And for those who don't know,
Right.
the back joy is the sister product of the Theracane.
Yeah, well, it's a cousin because they're
It's
not.
a- okay,
they're
they're
not
cousins.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not
Yeah, they're
not the same
cousins.
company. But yeah, the Theracane. That's how it all began. Was this Theracane business, this personal back massager, and then I lost it, or I forgot it in Battle Creek. Right, a lot of stuff is forgotten and lost in Battle Creek, and so that happened there. And so I had to go out and figure something out. I mean, my back needed some massaging, period. I mean, I don't know how I could stay so chill without that. And so I went to Bed Bath & Beyond, and I found it and said, well, let's try this. And I fell in love. And so we've talked about it. We actually have a couple of our pictures. In fact, some that have been used to try to convince people that we're part of the Illuminati.
Yes.
But that the back joy's in it. And some of our listeners have fallen in love with that themselves. And so now there's these memes floating around with people using the massager, trying to keep chill, waiting for Paleo Radio. And to see this stuff just organically happen, just to see it develop. And I tweeted about it, Joe, and it's something that excites both of us, but that this is something that we saw in other shows that we respect. And I threw one out there, no religion required. I said, we know them. We know them as individuals, Hope After Faith, Bobby C., Jerry DeWitt, Ashley, Mouth of the South, even Jeremiah Traeger, the whole gang. That in their group, they had a committed, and they still do, a very vibrant, committed community of people that coalesced around the show and that would find themselves weekly going back to that same place. And over time, we've begun to see this with our own show.
Yes.
And to see core audiences and to see who are the people, the regulars, who are the people who are calling, who are the people that are posting, what are the things that are happening, memes that are being shared that, unsolicited. This is just people that love the show.
Yeah.
That absolutely love and identify with what we do. And they are creatively just spilling propaganda left and right for our program online, and we're really grateful. It's a fast track to being the savior of a third world country.
Yeah, and that's what we want. We want to wear the banana uniform with the fruit on the side, the little lapel fruits. We want
the palm
we have a
branches.
straight up banana republic going on through Paleo Radio.
Yes.
That's our goals. Plus, the mole's released that again.
Yeah.
Like, for people who are not really picking up what we're dropping here because it's only through the radio medium, our social media presence is very fun. We like to do the kooky stuff. We like to do our fake conspiracy theories that are created, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to see that others are joining us in a lot of the debauchery.
Yeah, that some of them. And hey, we have such a fun time, and we've been we're excited at how many people listen. But we're even more excited because we're seeing more and more of these individuals who say, yeah, I really love the show. Once a week, I tune in on my podcast or I listen on 95.3, however they tune in. But then during the week, they're finding themselves with the shakes, Joe.
Yeah.
They're getting the cold sweats. They need more. And so they're finding themselves just out of just raw addiction, finding themselves on their hands and knees dragging, and finding Paleo Radio and being rejuvenated every day by original content. We are producing original content over at Paleo Radio Show. It's always engaging, and we're inviting everybody. Listen, if you love the show, come on over. Talk to us. Enjoy the conversation. Post on our wall. We'd love to meet and to speak with all of you.
That's right. And speaking of meeting, there's a humongous meeting this weekend.
A huge one.
A gathering of sorts, you could say. Politico.com article, reading it, but you could read it over any major news site and also fake news websites. Women's March draws almost twice the metro ridership of Trump's inauguration. Mm-hmm. This is just one of many, but I think that this intro into it is really good. This is by Matthew Nussbaum, again out of Politico. As demonstrators filled the National Mall on Saturday for the Women's March on Washington, Metro Rail clocked its second highest daily ridership level ever, with 1,001,613 trips. The Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority has reported that.
Wow.
The only day to draw more riders in the system was January 20th of 2009, the day of former President Barack Obama's first inauguration, when the system saw 1.12 million trips. So just about, only about 100 or so less.
Yeah, and Saturday's ridership also far outpaced the numbers for President Donald Trump's inauguration on Friday, which drew 570,557 passenger trips, according to WMATA.
Which is a good turnout.
That's a good turnout.
That's 500,000 people.
But it's hilarious because Trump, one of the things that you can just see is that he really just loves one-upping Obama. Like, he gets off on the idea.
It's a measure.
It's a measure. So this is one of those things. That and, of course, the popularity rating right now. These are things that he's not winning on that score.
No.
And we have optics, in fact, that demonstrate that and that say, it doesn't say one thing or another necessarily. But at the same time, we have these huge numbers, right? This second highest daily ridership ever. But we had those huge numbers with not huge numbers at the inauguration.
Yes.
Which meant that there were huge numbers of people going there, not for the inauguration per se, but there for the march.
That were there, yeah.
Yeah, and this has been a highly contentious thing, Joe.
It has been. Well, and the thing that doubled down on it, which is what one of our little memes was about, was Sean Spicer, as the White House press secretary, goes up there and says, and this is the thing is, arguing about the crowds and everything is just I wonder why it is the highest of importance for the White House at this moment, but he comes out and he says, the inauguration crowd was the largest ever, period.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pompous.
He said 5. Actually, Politico had a hyperlink that talked about Spicer and said a series of false claims that Trump dispatched his press secretary to the White House briefing room on Saturday evening to complain about the coverage. Here are 5 things that he said in that briefing. Number 1, this was the first time in our nation's history that floor coverings have been used to protect the grass on the mall. That had the effect of highlighting any areas where people were not standing, while in years past, the grass eliminated this visual. Well, that's just historically inaccurate. Obama's 2013 inauguration had several acres of this.
Yes, it did.
There's evidence. You can go and see it.
They thought over 1 million people were going to be coming.
Yeah.
And they did. Over 1 million people did come. So, I mean, they did lay it down in the grass.
Yeah,
that happened.
Number 2, this is the second one. All of this space from Trump's platform to the Washington Monument was full when the president took the oath to office. Now, this is an interesting thing. Politico says this. To believe the area was full when Trump took the oath, one would have to believe the watchers left en masse in the minutes between the oath and the speech.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like they were all there for that one thing, and then they just en masse, talking tons of people are just like, well, we're done. The rest of the day is not happening.
Yes.
Like, we're out, so we don't need to worry about it. Number 3, we know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inauguration. And they say that Spicer's correct, that per the Metro, there were 317,000 trips taken before 11 a.m., but that by that metric, the 2017 figure would be 193,000, less than half of the 420,000 that Spicer claimed.
if you leveled it off with him. So he's taking his whole numbers and comparing it to just by 11 o'clock for President Obama's second inauguration.
But that says something.
But to me, too, is this is driving a narrative. And here, look, we're talking about it right now. So I'm saying that we're being, it's not being duped, but we are assisting in something that I think we need to quit assisting in immediately, which is this derangement about crowd sizes and interest and these sort of things. This is a way of spurring and continuing to keep interest. Like the fact that Donald Trump didn't have as big of a crowd almost is meaningless to the fact that we're still talking about Donald Trump's crowd right now. And that's what we have to catch ourselves doing. Like, I think this is a unique time, and people laugh at it because it's a small thing, but things build upon each other. The White House press secretary chose the very first conversational piece that from the top down, from the institution that he was supposed to give, the message was supposed to be, we had the largest crowd ever. You guys are wrong, fake news. That was the first message.
Right.
That's troubling. Very troubling to me.
His priorities, according to Nielsen ratings, I mean, because they even went and said, well, but the live stream and stuff. 30.6 million viewers tuned in across 12 networks to watch Trump's inauguration. That's big.
That's a big number.
That falls well short, though, of the 41.8 million viewers who watched Ronald Reagan's 1981 inauguration.
Yeah. The
37.7 million who watched Obama's in 2009. And the 34.1 million, this surprised me, who watched Jimmy Carter's 1977 inauguration.
I believe that, yeah.
And the 33 million who watched Richard Nixon's 1973 inauguration. So even on those metrics, even if you were to go and say the live stream and stuff like that, the 2009 live stream, you had at that time record audiences, over 25 million people live stream across the day.
Yeah,
for that. And so the numbers game, I mean, that's the whole thing.
Playing a game.
It's not getting them anywhere.
No,
it's just not.
Well, but the other thing is, and this is what I'm concerned about, is that when they will try for a while, I believe that the Trump administration is going to try for a while to convince everybody that they are the most popular thing that's happened and that this is like a Reagan Revolution type thing. This is a huge wave of change that the whole country's ready for. And the numbers don't match that. And I just wonder if they are going to continue that. And look, we have it could go any direction. I'm not trying to make predictions. But I do say, I think that when we get 4 years down, I wonder seriously about where we're going to be in terms of how they view the people that will never join the group. Yeah, I mean, basically what this message is saying, and this, dude, to me, this sounds like third world dictator stuff. This is we had the biggest crowd of all time in our country's history, period. We just said it. We're the White House moment. I think it's over a small issue, but if they can't even come to grips with that with the factual evidence, I'm scared at what's going to come out of that.
You would just think that, it would be better just to spin it.
Yes.
I mean, that's the game anyway.
The game
wouldn't you just simply spin it and be like, hey, listen, it rained a little bit.
Yeah.
People were wearing ponchos and stuff. Maybe they just weren't in the mood.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you could
say
spin
it
it a bazillion ways.
Bad weather.
Yes. But instead, well, and I don't know if they could use the rain to spin it because, according to Franklin Graham, that was actually a sign from God.
Nah.
He went into that. Right. He went into that moment. So you have to pick. Are you going to use it to spin, or because then you're blaming God?
Yes.
You're kind of saying, listen, Lord, you really screwed it up for Trump.
Well, and I think we should, the intent is what I'm concerned with more than the actual things being said. The intent is to say that no matter what pictures you took, no matter what video was taken, and no matter what metrics there are, this is what happened yesterday. We said so, and we're going to divide the consensus on those numbers because we want them to be different. It's a concern of mine. It's a worry.
We'll talk more about the Women's March. And listen, if you participated in the Women's March, we've met a lot of people here in town who participated, even in Lansing. But if you're across the country and you're listening, give us a call, 616-656-1680. And remember, our question of the day, what's the largest island on Earth? We'll be right back.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio here in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. And again, you can always call in 616-656-1680. And with that, we do have a caller on the line. Nancy, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Great. We heard that you were in the you were at the march. Is this correct?
We were. We were in D.C. for the day. So
great. How did that go? What was that like?
it was unbelievable. I mean, the thing that I came away with the most was the peacefulness and how just everyone was there, and it was there was such a positive. I know maybe we're screaming bad things, but we didn't hear any of that. And there was just this feeling of even calm because you were there and you all knew why you were there.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to listen to Gloria Steinem then? Were you there in time for that?
We were there, yes. We were there. We were not close enough to that stage, but they had the big screens. The problem was the audio was really bad, so people were standing up on things, and then they were calling down to us what they were saying.
Oh, I see. So you're kind of doing a telephone system.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. But that was kind of cool too because everyone was just quiet, and then
you might have heard her speech.
Yes,
it's like the game of telephone. I wonder
right.
what details.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
That's right. But it was it was just the most amazing thing I've ever been to.
What were some of the groups that you saw there? Did you see any groups there that you were surprised to see?
I'm trying to think.
I know that's kind of an oddball question.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I know. There were so many, and there would be groups. The thing that was amazing, like when you would try and move to another place, people would clear the way for you and make sure that your whole group was with you. Wow,
that's interesting.
Yeah, they would say, how many people are in your group? We're going to make sure everybody gets through. And I don't know that I saw anybody that I was surprised to see there. I was surprised at how many I'm an older person. I was surprised at how many older people were there. I mean, really, honestly, older people.
Yeah.
And also people with disabilities, a lot of people with disabilities that they made sure things were accessible to.
That's great. Now, it says, I'm reading here from NBC News, it says an estimated 500,000 people. And, I mean, that is a ton. That's 5 Michigan stadiums worth of human beings in one city at one time walking around.
Yeah. And that was what we got. Well, we left at 6 o'clock on Friday night and got there about 6 o'clock Saturday morning, and then left at 7 o'clock Saturday night and got back to Grand Rapids at 7 o'clock Sunday morning.
Okay.
So we didn't stay anywhere. And,
sure.
I think the amazing thing is when we got there, you were just kind of walking towards things, and then all of a sudden you'd turn around to go back another way, and you'd realize you couldn't.
Because
people were just,
wow.
They were just swarming, yeah.
Now, I do have another question, and here I'm not having you speak for everyone at the event, right? But the vibe that you got from it, do you feel like it was more of an anti-Trump vibe or more of a celebration of democracy? Because what I'm looking at when I see it is, compared to the differences of the anti-Trump protest when he was being sworn in, 230 people arrested. This was during the anti-Trump protest during his inauguration. But then the next day, you have 500,000 people there, and no arrests were reported. We all felt, and we had talked about it too. I mean, as all of us, but that's what we were there. One of the chants was, "Tell us what democracy looks like," and then people would chant, "This is what democracy looks like." Yeah.
So that was more. I didn't hear a lot of. I mean, there was, hey ho, whatever, hey ho, Donald Trump's
got to go. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even kind of. That was not the feeling that I got. It was more, we want people to know that we do care about everybody, and we're going to make sure that keeps going forward.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you attended it. Yeah, that is. It's a fantastic story, right? I'm sure you're going to be able to tell people about it for many, many years to come, and about what an event.
Right. Well, and it's also starting a lot of grassroots things right here in areas where we don't tend to be so democratic.
Yes,
Right.
that's a nice way of putting it.
Is that how is that?
I
that
like
was
that,
good,
Nancy.
huh?
That's very, very right along the line. Have you considered politics?
Yeah.
I know. Well, some of my friends are saying, "What are you running for?" But I'm not. So
Hey,
I'm. I'll help some other people.
Hey,
but
that's what Gretchen Whitmer said.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
Gretchen,
that's what
Whitmer,
Gretchen
said.
Whitmer said.
And hey, we've been, and this is out to Gretchen because we love her, but we've
I do
been
too.
calling it for years.
We have.
We've been calling it for years, saying, "Nah, I know what she's doing." So we're on to you.
I had the opportunity of interviewing Gretchen, what was it, I think 2 years ago on a show here in WPRR that was called Southpaws. And when I talked to her then, she was in studio, and I remember telling her, I was like, you know people are going to always be asking you about running for governor. And she was like, I'm not interested. I want to do the small stuff first. And I was like, we'll see about that.
First.
So, that's great stuff.
All right. Yep.
But
Yeah,
thank
well,
you. Oh, go ahead. Do
okay.
you have a final comment, Nancy? We'll give you that one, then we're going to have to let you go.
All right. I just want to thank you guys for what you're doing, and this is the station I'm on almost all the time. So we need to hear all the voices.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We appreciate
All right.
it.
Okay.
Have a
See ya.
good one. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we still have our question of the day if you'd like to take part in that. What is the largest island on Earth?
On Earth.
You can give us a call, 616-656-1680 if you've got the answer, and you can win a WPRR magnet.
And as our friends to the south of the border say, no trampa, which is do not cheat. Don't use the Google machines.
Yeah.
You have to call in and guess.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would have gotten that.
I don't know.
I think I would have picked one other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe after the break we'll give that as a hint. We'll see. We'll see. Last week we didn't have a winner either. Nobody was able to come up with the right answer to last week's question, and so we're. What was last week's question, Joe?
Oh man, you're.
I'm putting you on the spot,
Putting
dude.
me on the spot.
I'm totally putting you on the spot. It was a great. What happened in this day in history? We never gave the answer.
that's
It was
right.
prohibition.
Prohibition, guys.
What is
Come
wrong
on.
with you people? Seriously, seriously. Let's step back for a second. All right. We pose this question today to our audience. We talk about this all the time. Prohibition. We talk about the drug war. We talk about all this stuff. And to sit there and say, what happened on this day in history? It didn't go into effect. Or it wasn't voted on. It went into effect. On this day, we said it was an amendment. And on top of that, we said it was notorious. In fact, quite possibly one of the most notorious amendment. And nobody was able to come up with prohibition.
Yeah,
That's
so
just mind-blowing.
And believe it or not, even on the FCC, I can say this, but you shot a blank. All right, hey, I'm going to bring in Matthew here. Matthew, you have an answer for us about the question of the day. Matthew, are you there?
Yes, I'm going to guess it's Greenland.
Yes,
look at
look
you
at
go.
that.
Nailed it. Man,
You
and
totally
your
nailed
geography
it.
classes, you paid attention. We're happy for you.
Yes, I went to a private school. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Hey,
Hey.
tip of the hat, he takes a bow.
Hey, I went to private school. I went to private school.
What a great answer. I love it. So we are we'll hold you on the line, see if we can get your information. We can send you some wonderful goodies, Matthew, if you're interested in those, which of course
Sure.
we assume you are, right?
I didn't even know. I was just, that's fine.
It's another great day.
It's a cherry on top of an already great day, man. So we're going to get your information. We'll go ahead and send a WPRR magnet. You can put it on your car, or your refrigerator, or anywhere you'd like, and we'll make sure to get all your information and get that out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
yeah,
thank you.
Stick
Yes.
on the line. We'll have Angela take your call off air here. Thanks. All
Yes.
right, so we nailed it.
There
Look
you
at that.
go. Look at
Asked
that.
it twice, and you get it right there.
Look.
Private school Matthew nailed it.
Private school, Matt. That's how he knew it, Joe.
Yes.
That's how he knew it. So
Yes.
we're so grateful. Thank you for the call. Yes. So last week's answer was prohibition. Naughty, naughty listeners. This week we have a winner, and so that's super exciting. The largest island on Earth, and I would have said it Australia.
Yeah,
I probably that would have been my first thought. It would have just come to mind, and then as you said the answer, I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that now that I'm thinking
It
more
would be
clearly.
Greenland.
Yeah, Greenland. So thank you so much for that phone call. We'll make sure to get that information and get that sent out right away. Don't go anywhere, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the Women's March, in
Yes.
fact. We're going to go ahead and do that. If you'd like to call and join the conversation, 616-656-1680. We'll be right back with more of the greatest show in Grand Rapids, Paleo Radio.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, having lots of fantastically great discussions today. We've been talking about Women's March. We've been talking about U.S. troops in Poland, Rick Perry wanting to bring the Department of Energy back once he realized he was going to run it, and many other things. We have Matthew, who was on in the previous segment, but Matthew had a comment for us, too. How's it going, Matthew?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to act like we're doing it all over again.
Welcome back.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
What was your comment?
Okay, I've been listening to this station since the election, and
Okay.
I wanted to get the other side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And after listening for a couple months now, I realized that y'all are basically the equal and opposite to traditional right-wing talk radio.
I think it would depend on the station. I think there are the shows on it. Now, to be clear, I think there are some shows that we air here that have that idea in mind, where they want to be a weight counterweight. So,
Right.
But I think it depends on the show. I really do.
Well, and
No, I will agree with you.
Yeah.
That your show has been consistently a lot more neutral, I would say, than some of the other local shows that are on. The Boiling Kettles seems to be pretty much a carryover of your traditional, like, I can't remember the gentleman's name that's on every day at 12.
Tom
but
Hartman?
More of that. Tom Hartman, right. The aggressive, ultra-left, and I'm sitting back and listening to all the things that Trump said and filtering through the lens of someone that's paid very close attention to politics for the last about 20 years. And when I listen to Trump and where I look at where his positions are, I see somebody that's about ready to break some of the polarization that exists between the two parties. And I say this because Newt Gingrich almost destroyed his presidential chances when he talked about global warming, and that was back in 2008. And just at the mention of it, that there was good science there, almost destroyed his political career. It made everybody stop and take a second look at him. Because on the right, you're not going to find anybody that's going to be for global warming. Mm-hmm. I had to go and take college classes, and I had an instructor that really wanted to teach us the truth without making it a political topic.
Absolutely.
And when we looked at it just with the science, not with yelling, not with screaming, but just looking at the science and explaining the real problem with global warming, because I never understood it, it has to do with the rain patterns and shifting the rain patterns. And it's going to make certain areas drier and other where they won't get any more rain.
Yes.
And then other areas where they'll be very wet.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We'll let you finish here.
Well, that's a lot different than a bunch of polar bears are dying and we need to save them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I was led to believe before was.
Yes. To your point on Donald Trump, I have two quick points, then we'll let you finish here, and then we're going to have to let you go. But yeah, I think what you said, Matt, is sorry if I called you Matt, not Matthew. I think what you said is very pertinent, especially with Donald Trump and shaking down like with global warming. My opinion is I don't know if it was so much Donald Trump or if it was so much the fact that when you come to power, you get held accountable in a different way than when you're the secondary party. And when you're the secondary party, you can hold on to your constituency's beliefs harder because they're really all you've got. When you move into the national scale, you actually are addressing and representing a wider swath of people, and it's harder to get away with those positions. But I do think that there are a lot of things Donald Trump comes in on that he has a different perspective than a common or everyday Republican does, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes I think that's bad. But it is certainly true. He's not the exact same, and I don't think we should expect him to be an absolute right-wing ideologue style Republican for 4 years or something like that.
And let me jump in just for 1 second. I want to say thank you, first of all. Thank you for the remarks that you made. And we've never said a discouraging word about any other show. We love them all, but we are different.
No, and I didn't mean it that way.
No, yeah, right. But you're right to point out a classification and say we've put ourselves on the line. We say we want to give credit where it's due. We want to criticize sharply, but only criticize those things that are honest to goodness, worthy of criticism, and only to the degree that it warrants. And so this puts people, it's a lot easier when you're a cheerleader on a team and you can just simply rah, 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 and you've got a base that says, man, that's awesome, you're saying the words I like. it's a different thing when you say there's going to be discomfort sometimes, folks, because that's how truth works. And sometimes that's how people are. You know, they're not cookie cutters. They're complex. And so we try to take that really seriously here, and we're really grateful that listeners like you are able to see that and recognize the value of this show as a standout even.
Yes, and I do like your show. It's fast-moving, and you guys get into a little bit deeper water than most other shows do. And I want to thank you guys for that. But what I would say is I understand that, generally speaking, in the primaries, whoever's the farthest to the right and to the left is generally the one that gets the nomination. And then as the general goes on, they spend the next couple months explaining why they didn't really say what they really said. But that's not exactly what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing global warming is true and it's real, and the right's not going to accept it. But he has said things consistently along the way that if you listen very closely, you can pick up on. Secondly, when Ted Cruz was still in the primary, he said that he would be for single-payer. And come on now. Name 3 Republicans that would be open to single-payer.
Yeah.
So
30 years ago, 30 years ago, we could have named about 50.
It's the retribalization of man.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it is.
But
There's a great
we're so
reshifting.
polarized. If the
Yep.
left says that we're for this, this, and this, and the right just immediately says, well, we're against all that. And they have to redo their platform based on what the left wants.
Yes.
And what I've been trying to say is, your side lost, and in order to be the bigger side, that this is the time, like I'm trying to be a catalyst for good and peace. And we, the American people, are the ones that are going to lose every election. We're the ones that always lose. You had 8 years of Obama, and as a underclass white man, I don't feel like I got ahead. And if I'm supposed to be the most privileged of everyone in society, then I feel sad for everybody else.
Yeah.
Because if you get what I'm saying there, I don't feel like Obama helped the little guy at all. I don't feel like anybody has since NAFTA went into effect. And I feel like the right has always been about free trade, and what we want is fair trade, or trade that's advantageous to the United States.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another
I
agree with the
position
trade.
that's against consistent or traditional Republican values.
Yes.
And he also said, I don't have a problem with gay marriage. It's the law.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
I'm
he
just
carried
saying,
a flag.
like,
He carried an LGBT flag on the stage. Yeah.
okay, and he can't imprison Hillary Clinton. Because how is that going to look when they already started doing that? The woman that does the show at 8 o'clock in the morning, she said that America has just elected a man that has vowed to imprison his political rival. Now, that's not exactly a really, objective way of putting that statement. Now, everything she said would pass the truth table, but he's not locking her up because she ran against him. He's locking her up, or wants to press charges or move ahead with an investigation because there's evidence there.
Well,
And we've talked about that.
we
the
have.
evidence
I
of
would.
this.
I would
Right.
contend to say that he did it entirely as a political spiel because he lost interest at the drop of a hat the minute that he won. All of a sudden, all the wrongs she ever did were not really that important.
Well, and you can't imprison your opponent.
That's right.
You can't
Well,
do
you
it.
can't.
He would have to pardon her.
You can't do it in a first world country, and whether it's rightfully so or not, there are people that are worried that he uses third world tactic, and sometimes he sounds like
Thank
it.
you so much for that phone call.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. We're glad that you got to stick around and make a point. We're
Yeah.
really grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then we're going to have to take our break, but right when we get back, Stan 44, our man, we know you're waiting on the line. We'll get right back to you. Stick around, folks. 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. We are going to go back to talking about the Women's March for a little bit and see if we can get some time in there. Boy, it's been hard to get it in, but we will. All right, we will catch you guys on the flip side of the break.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
We're total gangbusters here every single Monday from 10 to noon. You can hear us on the replay Monday nights, 10 to midnight. Same schedule following Sunday. Sunday from 10 to noon and Sunday night from 10 to midnight. So you shouldn't get the shakes too bad. I know that there's a number of days there between Monday and Sunday on the replays, but you can always go. Listen, if you're just, really chiefing and you're really freaking out and you got the shakes and the sweats and you just can't take it anymore, make sure to go check us out at Spreaker.com/PaleoRadioShow, and you can listen and download and like and comment under every single podcast that we've made since Joe and I have come together over the last couple of years. You can go and check that out. It's a whole bunch of fun. And, in fact, when we went, we're really excited, in fact, about how things are going. We're excited about our Spreaker listenership and our base there. And so we want to thank every single one of the podcast listeners. We love you like crazy. You are a huge, massive, meaningful part of everything that Paleo Radio means and stands for.
Yes, and if you really love the show and you want to contribute to the show, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Paleo Radio and contributing today. All right, we have Stan on the line, Stan44. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Stan.
Hey, I got a couple brief comments, and then I'll get off the air and let you respond.
Hey, fire away.
First of all, I think two of the consequences of our new Trump administration are going to be that they're going to make tax concessions to the corporations, and the corporations are rushing to get involved with the Trump administration. So once they do that, they'll come back from overseas and bring their money back, and because they're going to get tax breaks, and then that would probably mean more jobs here in America. And so that might be a positive thing from the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm. And this is a cool thing for our listeners who don't know. Stan44 is a friend, and we call him Stan44. He was tuned in on day 44 of the occupation of Paleo Radio. I think it was back in 2012 at that point. And generally progressive dude, so to be able to say, and I just want to thank you and just say, I think this is a good development in the way that people are dealing with it, whether it's the grief cycle, whatever it is. But to say, listen, on the one hand, it kind of sucks that, corporations are getting cozy and it's not good necessarily, maybe the kind of breaks that they might get. But we can see some silver lining on that and roll with it to a degree. So that's the first point. You wanted to bring up another one.
Well, I think the consequence of the job that they'll have are that there'll be, lower wages, and that's, of course, we're headed that way anyway, for middle and lower class. But that's America the way we are, unless we get together and vote these rascals out.
Yeah, I've always looked at it as I think it's a great thing to be bringing jobs back into America. It's not a great thing to bring them back into America with the idea that big corporate tax breaks pay off the employee better. I mean, that means more jobs, same pay. I mean, that's you'll get to choose between 3 jobs that pay you $9 an hour instead of just one. That's not. It won't be the grand replacement I think that people expect. But I do like the idea of bringing jobs back in. But we have a structural problem with the assumption that tax breaks on the rich produce more value to the employees that work within those companies, and I think that's the struggle we're going to have. But we had that struggle before Donald Trump came in. We have it now. It's the same deal. It's
a response to any jobs program, honestly.
Right.
Anytime somebody brings up jobs, and they're talking about bringing jobs back, if it's the same conversation. What kind of jobs? What are the deals that are being made to make sure that this happens? What are the things in place that discourage it? It's the same conversation. So I think that in that sense, there's continuity, and I think that that's actually a good thing.
Right.
Yes.
The infrastructure jobs are going to have to be here, and energy, transportation, continental transportation. I think we're going to try to get to cross-country transportation, through rail systems, and I mean, there's no way you can export those kind of jobs anyway. So,
no.
And the final thought I want to make, and I get off the air. Mike, right? Did you guys see the Sunday paper?
No, I haven't seen Sunday paper.
There's pictures right there in the Sunday paper. I can.
Cool, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You went to the rally.
Great.
Yeah.
Send that in.
Yeah,
please.
make sure. Yeah, and make sure to go to Facebook.com/Paleo Radio. And join the conversation there too. But we're just so grateful. And we mentioned you earlier. We said we were grateful that you called about the fake news. We bit the bullet. I thrust myself upon a sword earlier in the show. Yeah, and that sword, I said I had a little help from Stan44, a good friend.
Well, we all can be a little tricked every now and then. But hey, you guys are doing great work, and I'm going to get off the air and give you guys a chance to bow out there.
Yeah, thank you, Stan. Thanks.
All right, goodbye.
Yep, 616-656-1680. So this Women's March, Before we run out of time, we've been promising kind of kicking this can down the road. So the Women's March, I had some people who asked me to promote it, right? And I had probably 5 or 6 different people who reached out to me and asked if I would promote it on my wall. They were curious to know if it was something that we would share on Paleo Radio's wall. And it actually brought out an interesting conversation. Just speaking from myself, is that I said, no. I said, I don't even remember the last time I shared. Actually, I do. I remember the last time I shared an event that I encouraged people to go and actually protest, and it had to do with Occupy. And I've opened up here on the show about some of the lessons I learned as a pundit and as a journalist, somebody reporting on something and giving my opinion, not just reporting on it. I'm not sitting here just simply reading what people are saying. These are our thoughts that we have. And saying I don't feel like I'm an activist. Mm-hmm. And I don't even feel that my work here, we have a morning show. It's a talk radio program. I might be involved with organizations that are activist-oriented. I'm involved with tons of people and even interest groups that are activist-oriented. This show is, I would contend, loosely affiliated with the secular movement. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're not neck deep in this stuff. We're not Seth Andrews or Dogma Debate. That's not our realm. That's not even our dimension, kind of, in a way. We're a political show. We talk about religion. We're unbelievers. But we're not out there with signs. If people would reach out to me privately, and I told people this, I said, if someone reaches out to me privately, and they did, I would share it. If they ask about it and say, did you hear about the Women's March? I had a couple people do that. I shared information about it with them and said, there you go. But I did have something that I brought up yesterday, and I'm sorry for talking so long, but just to say this, that when I was at a meeting yesterday and we were talking about it, and someone brought up that pro-lifers were not allowed. In fact, they were specifically mentioned as being, we don't want you here, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it, and I brought this up to some people, and I said, when I was a lobbyist in New Jersey, and I was the chief aide to a really powerful guy, and we were in coalitions and networks all the time. And at that time, I was one of those guys that was 100% against abortion. No exception whatsoever. Didn't matter. Rape, incest, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. That was my position. But we found ourselves all the time in these meetings with Mormons. And Mormons don't share that opinion. In fact, I was kind of at the center of a national thing in the third-party world over a debate over whether or not the third party, the Constitution Party, had as its official platform that you had to believe in no exceptions, because there was a really powerful chapter of it led by Mormons, and they were against it. But when we wanted to put together a policy, we would sit at the same table, and even if we didn't agree, and even if the policy did not push us entirely where we wanted to go individually, it moved in a direction that ticked off people that I was speaking with about this issue. I said, these people were willing to work with each other even if they didn't completely agree, and it was to your demise. Mm-hmm. And so you're watching as you get flustered and upset and angry as rights are being, what you believe about this is being taken away, but it's being taken away by people who are willing to not get everything they want, but move that dial.
Mm-hmm. Well, in a way, that same argument is an argument for people who were in the election time to vote for Hillary Clinton instead of voting third party and voting their conscience. It's the same argument in a way, because you're telling them you're going to get incremental movement in the right direction with her, not everything you want, but you shouldn't vote. You shouldn't take it upon conscience.
That's the strongest case that can be made for it, because that is how. I mean, at the end of the day, that is how it plays itself out. Whether or not it's an extreme, divergent kind of candidate or a mainstream candidate, that due to the infrastructure and the way that stuff is laid out and the process it has to go through, it will move incrementally, rarely ever. Yeah. And in fact, we saw not so much incremental steps. We saw kind of a fast track for the last 8 years of a number of things, even to the surprise of progressives. Where I remember when gay marriage was going through the pipeline, that people were saying how fast, as a movement, how fast this stuff had just been going. And I said, that we've enjoyed that. That's actually kind of almost an anomaly. That's why it was so surprising. So yes, incremental shifts, but when you're forming coalitions and you're saying, man, I want to make this power thing move a little bit, to say, I'm going to work with people I don't entirely agree with, even on this one cause. But for example, take the pro-life group. There's a group, Democrats for Life of America, I think. They if it comes down to prenatal care and to making sure that every pregnant woman in this country has it, they're a good ally to have. If you want a single payer and you want all this stuff to be taken care of so that, and we know statistically that helps in the situation. In fact, that's part of what people who are pro-choice, that's part of their argumentation is they say, well, people who are pro-life, they don't want to provide these benefits. Well, there are some groups out there that could be in a coalition with you on those topics. Maybe not the one that says that you're okay with abortion at any time.
That's right.
But on other things that are important to that issue and important to what you're saying, they would actually be a valuable partner in a coalition.
Do you think that the Women's March was less inclusive, or do you think that exact thing is happening? Like, for instance, I don't think that the 500,000 people that joined it have all aligned views.
They don't.
And I think that the grassroots intersectionality happened. It's happening in a big way in that reorganization. And you were talking about the movement of man, right? The realignment of man. I think we saw a bit of that happening in a real way over the weekend. Is a bounce back, a reverb, if you will, of there's going to be a lot of grassroots movements that met each other at the Women's March and have started to work together and create networking. And I think that's one of the more positive things that came out of it is just that, I always believe that, we are not protesters. I'm not an activist of sorts. I understand it as honestly, and maybe someone will laugh at me about this, but I understand it as a professional thing that's needed.
Yeah.
It is a good thing to have people who are full-time activists that do activism, and that's what their causes are. Now, the way I look at it is I look at it like they're kind of outliers and they're pushing one cause, but they can make that one cause move in a heavy, heavy way. That's a well-established thing. That's a credible thing. I'm not that person. I like to talk about both sides of the argument and kind of lay it out to other people to see what they think. I have my own opinions on it too. But with the Women's March, I think we're seeing, like I said, a huge coalition of people that are coming together that I actually don't know if they agree on a lot. If you were to ask them, do they think capitalism or socialism would be the direction to go, I think you could have split that down the middle. It just depends, right?
Right. So, and I mean, if you look at their About page, you're going to have people there who want to make Michigan a sanctuary state. And that's the Lansing. I'll speak to the Lansing one, talking about wanting to make Michigan a sanctuary state, talking about a number of different proposals ranging from minimum wage to other things. And that, so you have a lot of these interests that are there. And I thought about it and I said, I saw a lot of people. In fact, a good friend of ours, Christopher Tanner, he was sharing a lot of stuff about it. And, of course, people who've listened to the show know that we have a couple disagreements, maybe one or two.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. But when he was talking about it, using a lot of the we stuff, and we mentioned this earlier in the show, whenever someone uses we or America has spoken, when talking about that, I think it's a little audacious in the way that, let's say, a lot of interfaith, I'm involved in interfaith, and if you have a bunch of interfaith people say, look, America has spoken, religions can come together, people would kind of laugh and say, well, that's true of a specific branch of religious groupings that are more liberal, more progressive, more tolerant and open. And so, but if you look at the grand scale, do they speak on behalf of the whole? Or is it audacious to use words like that, us or America or the people and stuff as if that identifies or that all Americans identify with it? And that's a tough one, especially, and I know this is controversial to say, but especially on the life thing, because it keeps going back and forth on this 49-51 deal. You look in over the last couple decades and you see public opinion on abortion for women, right? And you say, look at how this plays itself out. It's a diverse thing, right? And so it's a hard sell if any group tries to speak on behalf of somebody or others outside of themselves.
Yes. Now, in this thing too is we're talking about one march in D.C., but this was
all over,
happened all over the world. Even there were places that were outside of the United States, but 500,000 people that went to D.C., over 500,000. Marches weren't confined to Washington. An estimated 400,000 people marched in New York City, 250,000 in Chicago, over 100,000 in L.A., and more than 90,000 in St. Paul, Minnesota. 60,000 turned out in Atlanta, among other cities in the world. This is according to organizers and authorities that were at the events. So, I mean, it's a huge event
of solidarity.
Yeah. That's what I think is the big thing. Is I know everyone's doing it is hilarious to me that the tool in which conservatives had and used for 8 years is now being considered a snowflakey thing. Solidarity in a movement together with a bunch of people is a good thing. It's not. It provides things. It provides answers to things, or not necessarily answers, but it provides solutions and problems and gets people talking about situations. To act like this is a bunch of people crying about President Trump and saying that they just want him to be impeached is a little bit facetious, I think.
All right, make sure to go to Facebook.com/PaleoRadio for updates. I'm going to be speaking with Jeff for Justice about the two-party system.
Yes.
This week, Thursday.
Don't forget that. Thank you guys very much for listening to Paleo Radio. We appreciate every single one of you, and we'll see you next week.